Welcome, everyone. This is our first ever TypeScript systems maintainers meeting. Everyone's, I don't have to say it in this meeting, but for the recording, everyone's welcomed to join, even if you are not a maintainer. You would just like to learn about what we are doing, or you are contributing to those systems. And yeah, the main goal is pretty much sharing knowledge, figuring out like if somebody has a pain point or like pain in the system, probably it's shared and we should address it as a team. Um, so did I do something wrong, Paul? I saw you sharing a chat message.
It looks like it might not be shared where anyone in the GitLab group can edit.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, I didn't want anyone to touch the document, so sharing.
Especially not the GitLab.
It kind of reminds me of the extension now.
Ah. All right. Now everybody should be able to edit the agenda. So I'm gonna share my screen, I guess, and I'm gonna start going from the top to bottom, and we'll discuss all the issues of Node, and then the most impressing tech debt issues and anything else that we can think of. So the issues of Node, there is one thing that I proposed. It would be ideal if we implement this across all of the systems, and it would be FDD, very catchy name, fix me driven development. Thinking about we have a lot of follow-ups. Some of them are like optional, or they are like in a doesn't have to happen in the next milestone kind of thing. And in that issue, I'm explaining how we could potentially agree to add fix me's into the code during the review that brings the follow-up questions. Even if we don't address them, it might be a good indicator when you arrive to a class or a module in the system and you see that it's just written with fix me's. You would, for example, when you are estimating how long it's going to take something, you could say, all right, this has like 10 fix me's. I'll probably try to address some of them as I'm working on this code. So it's going to take me extra day or two. So that's one proposal. Yeah, go.
Do we want to have a follow-up issue for every fix me? Because like sometimes you like stumble across some things that can be fixed, but it's like so unrelated to your AMER. You can just like leave fix me and not create an issue, and like someone will.
I would definitely be in favor of that. Like the noting an issue is like a first step to eventually fixing it, and I would like to make that part as frictionless as possible. So if I notice that like this file is not matching, or this class is not matching naming convention, I would like to fix it, but this merge request is already 300 lines of code, and I don't want to add another 70 of like one language server rename. We can put there fix me and let it for someone else or you in the future handle without an issue.
On the agenda, I've noted some things on the on this in the notes section. But this was recently super helpful when we had our summer interns joining the remote development group and otherwise. Because trying to find issues that were easy-ish to pick up through our issue list is a way more difficult than doing a project-wide search for fix me's and to-dos and just being like, oh my goodness, this is a really easy thing to do. And yeah, it's helpful to make sure there's a backing issue for it, but I did find searching through the code for to-dos to be easier than searching through our issue list for to-dos. Regarding this, how do we feel about a maintainer before merging? If we realize like, oh, it would be nice to add these comments. We used to do this in the main project, but then there were some needs to prevent maintainers from committing. I don't know if that just was scoped to the main project or not. But I think it would be really nice for efficiency's sake, where if I'm reviewing something and I see like, oh, let's just add a comment here. If I could just, make a chore commit for that before approving and merging. What do we all think of that?
I think like, sorry.
Well, I was going to say that I don't have any problems. I think that it was a compliance restriction in the main project. It's very ambiguous why these rules apply to the main project and not to the peripheral ones. However, I think that if a maintainer has the initiative of fixing a bug as soon and doing it by themselves, I think that it's okay. That's contributing. I don't see a reason to block that initiative.
And if I
The prob-
understand, sorry, go,
Mhm.
Lena.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like on the main project, you just couldn't merge after you push something. So you kind of have AMER blocks, and then you have to go and find the maintainers that would merge after you added something to the merge request. So I guess it's an annoying rule, and I don't like it, but
It's
there.
the important thing here is that there are many more maintainers for the monolith than for the extension or for this projects, right? So it will be even bigger problem for this projects, I guess.
So do we feel like this is something that we're okay doing on the satellite projects? And I'm just saying we're just adding comments. We're not even changing any. That would be even a thing I think you could automate from a compliance perspective. You could automatically validate is that these set of commits we're only adding comments. Okay, I'm gonna do it then.
Yeah. Where should we document this? Because we have, it's a more meta question. We've got 3 systems. Each one of them has its developer documentation. But like if we are unifying these, and for example, we recently started unifying the TypeScript and the ESLint configuration. So we do have initiative to bring all these under the same style and process. Where would we document this? Would we try to do it in the main GitLab project?
Well, yeah, so I was kind of wanting to do it sneakily. But yeah, we should probably document it. And the main project is the best place to do it. I think that the wherever we do like the maintainer checklist, and we could have an aside for for projects that aren't the main project. A maintainer before merging can push a commit that just adds comments, specifically like to-dos and fix me's that can help keep our code base polished. I think, yeah, we probably want to document on the main project. Does that sound? And the code review section, because it's like a maintainer responsibility thing. Makes sense.
That sounds good. I wonder, what's the chance? I don't want to say it on the recorded video, but I'll make it at least private. What's the chance that we'll say this on the main project and somebody says, you don't have a rule that everything needs to go through like triple review and have some crazy checks and like slow everything down for the satellite projects? Like the chance of that is, I reckon, non-zero. So creating big merge requests with like loosening, or not loosening, but for a lot of people, it might be like first time seeing how, let's say, nimble our projects are. So
I think that's a really good call, but I think, yeah, I think that's been a concern in my head for a bit of time of just, and I've wanted to not have to fight that battle for some time, but I think it's worth being transparent about it. And if people are really wanting to
fair.
if we need to surface, hey, there's a reason these satellite projects are more efficient, and it's okay that they could be like that, and the controls we have in the main project, like if we need to be transparent and bring to the surface and have this conversation, I think there's enough large voices that would encourage the level of efficiency that we're operating on, and it's worth.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I agree with
your.
You echoed the silent part of my concerns, so I appreciate you bringing that up, Thomas.
Yeah. Okay. So merge request to the main reviewer guidelines. It is.
I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's good then. So we agree that we would like to. We'll see what the APEC maintainers will think as well. They can surely comment on Paul's merge request, but I think it would be a good outcome if we like agree that we will start adding fixed me's to the code. And it's something that can be like then relatively like a not precise, but it can be a measurement of the tech debt that we are occurring throughout whatever feature implementations that we are working on. Cool. The next one, very short, is the ESLint plugin. Maybe we can discuss it in general, but the particular issue I was linking or merge request was disabling max parameter rule. So in the main project, we've got this rule that if you have a function that takes more than 3 arguments, the ESLint starts complaining and you need to introduce a parameter object that you are passing in, which makes perfect sense in JavaScript, but in TypeScript it doesn't. So we agreed in that plugin config that we will disable it. And I guess if you notice that there is, for like the lesson from this would be if you notice that a new version of a TypeScript, ESLint config has been released and something's breaking, don't just necessarily go and fix it all in our systems, but maybe think whether that rule still applies to our TypeScript projects, because we inherit the JavaScript, plain JavaScript rules as well. Okay. Any comments on that? Okay. Then let's go to
any maintainers on the ESLint project. I think it would be great to have some of us in there.
Sorry, Andrea, I didn't quite get what you were saying.
Do we have in this group any maintainers of the ESLint project? I think it would be nice, at least to have a chance to review changes that are going through the main kind of
Isn't
baseline.
Mark maintainer there?
Yeah, I think Mark was maintainer.
Can you hear me?
Not really, Mark.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I guess people can volunteer to be maintainers, or at least reviewers for that project if it uses reviewer roulette.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have a few people in there just in case.
Mm-hmm. The next issue is about process change that Tristan suggested, where we have the release officer for language server and the VS Code extension. It's a role that's rotating on a monthly basis, mainly between the team members of the editor extensions. And we added a process, like a step in a release process where we are saying that you should update the web IDE as well, so it's not outdated by months when we want to publish some feature in web IDE. So just so you know, that's a process change. And then we've got these issues, and we can leave them for discussing here because they are one of the few top most voted issues that we've got from TechDev. So let's discuss them there. And the web IDE semantic release, that's not discussed here. So who brought it up and who would like to talk about it?
I brought it up because I found a common theme with the previous two issues in the list. We are talking about improving the release process of three projects that are quite similar. They are packaged as npm packages, and we're using a package.json file as metadata for versioning. The web ID in particular has the difference that it's a monorepo. So we have several packages in the way in which it's structured. So one of the ideas that was shared in this issue is to change, to migrate from semantic commits to using a file-based, let me open the issue. I don't remember exactly the name. But basically, let me see here. Yes, to using change sets. That is basically defining the change, that like adding a file to specify which change we are adding as part of a merge request. That will make it easier to make releases in monorepos as a web ID. But summarizing, the idea is that how can we find a common solution for the three projects? Like we are trying to solve the same issues. We have to bump a version in a package.json file. We want to update automatically a changelog file based on the releases that we are making. And I think that there is an opportunity to treat both the three issues as a single program.
Okay. So what is the problem that this is solving? Is it that when we release, we don't have a clear changelog, or is it that when we are releasing web IDE, the components are all versioned by by the same version as the web IDE?
We don't have a clear versioning. We are basing the version of the web IDE on a timestamp, distinguishing between dev and production releases.
Gotcha.
And there is no way of bumping the version of each individual package.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to release one of those packages as an independent unit, we cannot do it right now.
Gotcha. And is that on the cards? Is that something that you are planning to release? Like one of the packages that create a web IDE?
Yes. So we publish a main web IDE package that contains the VS Code form, etc. And then we also have the web IDE team.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it would be great to release. Actually, like this issue originated in the idea that we want to use that theme to publish it independently as an extension. But we want to install it by default on workspaces. Also, like it could be well, not bundled, but it could be associated with the VS Code GitLab workflow extension as well.
Okay, yeah, that sounds. And so, what would be the next step? I guess Spike, right? Spike would be good.
Yes,
okay.
I think that a Spike would be useful, but also I don't know if we want to try using the change sets option instead of going with semantic commits. And I think that's something that we were discussing as well for the workflow extension and the language server, right?
Yes, it is discussed. One of the top voted issues of improving the release. Yeah.
Is it something that if the web ID experimented using change sets, would that information be helpful for making the decision for the language server and the VS Code extension?
Yeah, for sure. For the language server, and especially since that's also a monorepo since recently, and it's got plenty of packages that could be reused. Like the end goal would be that some of the packages are used directly by the VS Code extension, like some network plumbing that we have would be just exported as a package by the language server monorepo and imported by the VS Code extension. So it'll be useful. We use the npm workspaces there, so I'm not sure how these monorepo or like mechanisms to modularize the JavaScript code base, they are very finicky, and there is going to be maybe different challenges with Yarn workspaces and npm workspaces. But yeah, it would be great. I had some thoughts about the change set. So some of the maybe concerns that I had could be perfectly like removed by some spike in any of those three systems. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting discussion now that we like. I feel like all the discussion that we are going to have, at least at the top few issues, including this WebID semantic release issue, will be about releasing. And so I wonder whether we can give that discussion some structure or some, if you have an idea how to talk about it, so we have an output that would be actionable, or at least that we would sort out our thoughts. Maybe we can start by describing all the problems that we have that are mentioned on those three issues. So I'm going to just go from the top of my head, and you can keep adding as you like maybe read the issues or you remember something that pains you. Release. So I'm just going to make this a little bit larger, and I'll go here and I say that manual process with like a, what is it called? Like it's possible where it's possible to make errors. We quite often like do some tag mishap where we squash something or don't include a tag in the main line, and then the next release has multiple, it includes all the changes from the previous, at least in a changelog, includes all the changes from the previous tag. And it's not end of the world when the maintainer has to go through it, but it takes 20 minutes if you are, or like 15 minutes if you are really rushing. And those 15 minutes are spread because you have to wait for pipelines to finish and whatnot. So it's a manual process. Paul, you want to say the next steps?
I do. So we see, because we do this manually, we don't do it often enough. And then we don't get integration feedback until the final step of bumping the WebID AMER package in the main project. And then sometimes we don't get feedback until it happens to fail some QA job that doesn't run on the merge request. Like, so this is, we didn't get it, now we got to revert things, and then we're in a rush to fix things because the whole upgrade pipeline is broken until we can fix some integration issue that happened downstream from the VS Code extension or something else. So having some integration feedback, maybe like as part of the release pipeline, like, or it's like if I'm cutting a release, would be interesting as like maybe before, not saying we block merge requests for some of this integration pipeline stuff because that's expensive, but maybe as a precursor to pushing up the tag, we got to run some sort of release, some like integration job on the main branch for that commit or something. That would be interesting. But yeah, I went straight from pain to solution. I'm trying to alleviate the pains. This is my mind avoiding pain, trying to make it better immediately. Yeah. The other pain related to what Enrique brought up, we completely aren't handling our bump the web ID package changelog like I think the main project deserves to be handled. And I don't even think though the main project really, because we do changelogs based on commits, often if I bump the web ID package, there's a set of user-facing changes. Some of them are bug fixes. Some of them are new features. But in the main project, this all gets represented, sometimes not even with a changelog, because Renovate is just like, oh, we just bumped the package. So there's kind of a problem to solve there of how do we accurately reflect in the main GitLab projects changelog the aggregation of changes that happen from the VS Code extension and the web ID that all get inherited with one web ID package bump. So we're not doing the best job there.
I would love to see an update to DangerBot if we added something to the danger files, which went and fetched the web ID and they compared the tags to see what the changelog was. Even if we look at the release artifact, say if we were publishing a release artifact, it might even be on the changelog already.
That would be neat. That's a really good idea of like, if Renovate, if we could, you know, when it does, it somehow exposes change logs when we do like dev, any kind of dependency update, it can add that to like the MR description. But if we can give it instructions for like, well, this is a user facing, you know, application. So any change logs we want to somehow like actually carry through in the commit you make, that would be interesting.
Well, yeah, so what we could do is when Renovate creates MR, we could have a DangerBot script which checks, hey, package.json was updated. Was there a modification to GitLab UI or GitLab Web ID? And if yes, then go and fetch the changes from the API. And I think we should be able to use the open source, like the public GitLab API. Shouldn't need to have to play around with like paths too much or anything.
Yeah. Do we on the main project, do we ever do like empty commits? Because the main project changelog is all based on the commit.
Yes,
and it's one value. It's like changelog added, changelog changed, changelog fixed. Do we ever do empty commits to like break up a changelog?
It's always the changelog trailer, as far as I know.
Okay.
And then if you squash it, like that also affects whether the changelog gets pulled in. And depending on your template, you could accidentally delete it.
I was so disappointed when we moved to commit-based changelog because it was like it's so less flexible now. Anyways, that's all right.
Okay, so that would be like, it feels like we really need, it's a cascading effect through 4 systems, and we would be really like, there could be generic solution. I haven't seen that in the JavaScript world, but it seems like if we all agree, like it's going to be tougher with the main GitLab project, because obviously that's using very custom way of compiling the changelog. But if we use change sets or conventional commits, and we would have a extra step saying like, is there some standardized changelog in that released npm module? I'm just gonna grab it and add it to my changelog as I'm bumping the version. However, the tricky thing is that not all changes, for example, that are in, at least that's how we approached it up until now in the language server, when you have a change that is a feature because it introduces we treat the features and bug fixes there differently, where features that are something cool about the language server that's not user facing is still considered a feature, and we would have to rethink that, I guess, if we implement this. But that wouldn't be the hardest part. The hardest part is to create a standard and enforce it with automation and process it with automation. I don't know how it sounds like a serious amount of effort. I don't know how soon we will equalize that effort with the effort of maintainers going around different systems and scraping for changes to include them in changelogs. Like, is it a year of us doing it? Is it a half a year? Is it 3 years of us doing this manual work? It sounds like it's quite complicated engineering task to build the whole automation around this.
Yeah, and at the same time as I don't know, I mean, I don't even know what the value though is to our end customers and users. Do they have what kind of information do they really need when they're looking at the change log? Like, I imagine we're so across the board. GitLab isn't the best at change log health. So does is it worth, our engineering effort to make our change log entry squeaky clean for the end consumer? I don't know.
It's also like nice to know it for debugging purposes when somebody says an issue happens. That's another manual changelog compiling I do when somebody says on this version the feature works, but on this one it doesn't. The changelog is not, even if the changelog is not a good place for this anyway, because it only contains user-facing changes, but sometimes we have refactors that touched the logic.
Yeah.
So we have, like, for the changelog panes, we have engineer debugging or user knowing what's new. I don't have an answer, I guess, but it would deserve its own issue because it is a manual step in the process, even for the VS Code extension, where we always include or sometimes include the language server changes in the changelog of the VS Code extension. So I guess the answer for in this meeting, since we only have about 10, 15 minutes left, will be that I'll create an issue for it, and we can see whether we want to do something about it there.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to discuss is, like, let's open okay, so we have the release. So let's time box it for another, let's say, 7 minutes. Just talking about release, and then quickly address the most pressing issue, like leave the rest of the meeting for the workflow, including VS Code extension and Web IDE. So with the release, let's go to the most voted issue about release automation. Right. So this is about, maybe Andre, you can refresh our memory and just give us intro for this issue.
Yeah, so this is basically, the idea is to avoid manual steps in releasing the language server and automate it based on the semantic release. So we actually already have a project that works this way, and in my previous job we also have a bunch. So that's I think a pretty stable solution. So the idea is basically that based on the semantic commits, we would bump the npm package version within the semantic release script, and then it will push to the registry provided the right tokens are applied. So basically, semantic release will create a commit with the version bump, and will create a push to npm registry of choice. This way, we wouldn't have to have a manual step for the LSP release, and we also would have the new version of LSP available right after the main branch pipeline succeeds. The drawbacks that you or some of you mentioned in this issue are the size of the package. So apparently every package version is pretty big. So if we release a few times a day, it could easily be some gigabytes of storage taken within like 1 day. There are ways to work around it, I guess. So first of all, we can just run the release pipeline on a scheduled basis. So for example, we just run it every day, and if there is something to release, we will just release one package daily. Alternatively, we can actually check if size is indeed a problem, or we can implement more aggressive cache pruning. So we wouldn't store, for example, every version, but just last, I don't know, 20 versions or something like that. But yeah, the whole idea is basically, in a nutshell, just automatically release or authentically publish the language server. What do you think of it?
I think that if we can overcome the one drawback, or if it's non-issue, maybe we can just have like a terabytes of language server releases and it's okay. Then it sounds amazing that like the moment we merge something, we get a renovated bot notification everywhere else, and you can, because like the speed of feedback is really great for this. I would love to figure out how to do it. With the other workarounds, like not versioning all the artifacts, I'm not sure whether there could be a possibility that some extension, like let's say NeoVim or something, will get out of date because we don't work on it every day, and its artifact is going to be removed or something. I don't know, but yeah, I would be 100% keen. What do others think?
I think we could have a cleanup policy. So we have the regularly like nightly ones, like it'd be great if there's 2 release channels, right? But even if there's not, we could have a cleanup policy. So you have like a protected tag. Well, we need to check how cleanup policies work on npm package. I think for the Docker, what you can have is a regex essentially. So you can have like your nightly tags, which are not protected, and then you have tags that will be deleted, right? So I'm not sure if that's the same case for the generic like npm package registry, but if it is, that would be great, because then we could have our protected tags, which are the semver tags, and then we have our non-protected, which are the nightly dev build tags. And so we could say clean up ones that match a certain regex, and that would be like the -nightly or the -build, like ones that get published.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually, Aaron. And the semantic release also supports different channels. So from the technical side, we can implement that. I also not sure about the like cleanup policies for different channels, so we need to investigate that.
Can we clarify why do we use the GitLab package registry and not npm?
Dogfooding, I assume.
Okay, I mean that makes sense.
And we don't have permissions. I don't think we yeah. So we could probably get permissions from whoever owns it, but we'd have to go track down whoever the DRI is for that account.
The web ID publishes to npm, so if we need to set that up, I think we can just copy whatever the web ID does. It did create an interesting situation when we needed to do like a security release for the package, which I wouldn't recommend doing on npm. I'm a little surprised that our like backend storage isn't. It could be smarter, I'm surprised that we would just naively store each chunk of data just over and over again, because I imagine there's so much similarity between the chunks, each package. So I would be, because of that similarity, I would kind of hope that whatever is responsible for storing stuff could do something like Merkle tree like smart like Git, and just store a chunk once, but I'm being overly idealistic.
Yeah. And also I think like the packages are basically tar archives or something like that, I think. So that also might be a little bit hard to implement.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But in the ideal world where you change one file and release it, the storage should only take, I don't know, kilobyte extra. That would be lovely. Yeah.
It's doable.
Yeah, it is. It is. Let's pivot from VS Code extension to optimizing package storage.
What's funny is if we were actually storing Docker images, like it would do that. Like if we released
Yeah.
the language server Docker image, but that would be silly. Anyways, all right.
Do you know if we have a contact person to ask about the like storage constraints in our npm registry?
Probably
go to infrastructure launch and ask them.
Okay, sounds good. I'll ask around basically. I think if the size is not an issue, then we can just adopt the straightforward, simple approach with releasing on every merge. And if not, then we can think of different strategies.
We can also
I'll check out
have.
and we'll post
Yes,
in
sorry.
this issue.
I was just thinking that we can maybe shift the manual work to cleaning up releases. If like there is some manual work, it sounds like I would rather once every 3 months verify that none of our clients is using the old versions anymore and run some script that will delete all the old releases rather than having to every other day release the language server. So that's
a good question. Do we have telemetry on what clients are being used? So I know that we recently introduced a new header, but I don't know that we collect that in like our snowplow telemetry. Is that exposed anywhere? I think the language server version.
Yeah, we have the language server and the client version, and yeah, I'm not sure we have the match, like which client uses which language server. But well, we know which client uses which language server version, but we don't have it like visualized anywhere as this match. But we can filter out. So we filter by the extension version or by the language server version, and we know which extension range uses which language server version.
Okay, best for last. Let's talk about how are we gonna build the extension so we can include it in WebIDE in production ready way. So the issue for people who might not remember is that when we were quickly iterating to pre-install the extension in WebIDE, the easiest way to do that with versioning was submodule. So now if you have a look in the WebIDE, you see that the extension is a submodule in the WebIDE, which comes with all the benefits and drawbacks. The main drawback is that every time you want to build the WebIDE for local development, you are also building the extension that for the WebIDE team, most of the time, 99% time, they haven't made any change to the extension, but they still need to incur the cost of building it. And so this issue is about finding out a solution, which most likely is going to be some artifact that gets built when we are releasing VS Code extension. Paul, anything you would like to add?
I would. I know we're at time, so I think the best use of everyone's attention for right now is I'd be really curious, is anyone finding value with today with the GitLab VS Code extension being a submodule? Is that, I think it was helpful when we were in the middle of some integration development, but is anyone finding that helpful right now? Okay, because then that's helpful. Okay,
Can
go
you
ahead.
define submodule? Not sure
If you
what
go
mean.
to the repository view, Thomas. So right now the web ID includes a submodule of GitLab VS Code extension, and this was helpful when we were building the integration between the two at the same time, because I didn't have to link the separate projects within my local file system. I get all of the VS Code extension just in this subfolder, and I can make changes, and it's automatically magically included in the build and so on. But the trade-off is that, well, now we always have to rebuild this project when we could just be pulling, we never make changes to the submodule really anymore. Or you could just be pulling a static build asset from some registry. So submodule is talking about this folder. So I'm suggesting, since that's not helpful anymore, I think just removing that and not worrying about that use case for right now, and optimizing towards release process workflow makes sense. It made sense when we were doing integration stuff, but now that we're not doing that so much, I think we want to prioritize the other development use case.
It would be still nice if we have it can be like a 10-step workaround of like create symling here and apply this patch here. But I anticipate that if we make the OAuth working in WebIDE, and we start, for example, enabling language server in WebIDE, there is going to be, again, a little burst of work that integrates these two systems. And so some workaround would be really useful, so you don't have to build the package and import it every time. Or if the building of the package locally and copying it somewhere is fast enough, then we can do that as well.
But can't we do it the same way we do when we integrate extension into the language, or like not integrate, but connect an extension and language server, like with Yalk? So you pin to some certain version of the extension, and then if you need the development version of the extension, you just link the local version with Yalk and be done with that.
I think it would be similar, but I don't think we could use the same thing, because the WebID doesn't consume the VS Code extension as an NPM package. The WebID also provides like VS Code bootstrapping. And so VS Code expects extensions to live in like this folder. So there's a little bit of like massaging that has to happen with the artifact. And on that issue, there's a reference to another package, which is like VS Code build. And this is how the WebID consumes that, a different artifact and a more quote unquote production ready way. But yeah, we're at time. So I think I got the information I was really looking for, which was nobody's really using the submodule today, which is helpful.
Just to add to what Dennis was saying, sorry, if everyone can sign off if you've done, if you have something. I just wanted to say that in the language server is also copying assets, like the language server publishes some files, and the VS Code extension build job then like reaches into the node modules folder and copies the files over to somewhere. It's not, we are not importing it as a NPM module. And so this could be like a feasible way how to relatively easy, like, because as far as I'm aware, then VS Code extension doesn't publish any NPM modules yet, but it could. The NPM module could have just a folder in it, and then that folder gets copied when you import that NPM module in WebIDE. That would give you Renovate bot, and it would we could copy exactly as Dennis says, use the Yalk approach to just like locally connect those two NPM modules.
That's a good idea. I didn't realize that that was already happening. And I'd be curious if like with that copy step, if I don't know what the name of it, if it was something elk-like.
Yalk, yeah. I can link the docs here in the issue after the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a really interesting approach. Anyways, yeah, thanks for chatting about it. I'm gonna hop off now.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Adios.
I'll
Have
see
a
you in
good
the
one.
next one.
Thank you.